everyone, what's up? This is Misti-Dawn from the Manamal Streaming Radio, and I'm here talking with the one and only David Reece. Thank you so much for joining me today, David. How you doing?
Hi, everybody. Greetings, David Reece from Piacenza, Italy.
That's awesome. I love the gym.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with David, he's been in the business since the late 80s. He was the former lead singer on the band Accept's 1989 album Eat the Heat, and has worked with several other bands through the years, such as his other band, Bangalore Choir and Bonfire. He's got a killer voice, so you definitely want to check him out. Yes. Now, briefly...
That's a nice lead off. Thank you very much.
Sure. Now, I'm just going to briefly touch on the subject of Sainted Sinners because I know that's kind of on the back burner right now. You did co-found this band. What happened there?
I'm not really sure. One thing that's a real hindrance to the band's progress is Frank plays with Bonfire, and they go out with a pretty big bang for a few months. So we released the album Back with a Vengeance in February, I believe. And I think they came out with their new one in March. So we had a window literally of about 5 or 6 shows. So I actually grew really personally tired of it. And that's when I focused on just putting together my own band and just going there. So as far as that thing, it's more of a project. Frank, I think, has another band going at the same time. If you don't play live, you're not a real band. And I need more than 5 or 6 shows a year, when I put my heart into an album for 6 months. So that's kind of where it is. I'm going to let him reach out to me and tell me what he's thinking about. I haven't really spoken to him in about 6 months, so it's in a weird state. It's a holding pattern right now.
I hope something gets kicked back up. I think you guys, were wonderful. So
yeah, great albums.
Yes.
Great albums.
Now that I think I got everybody caught up here, I want to talk about your exciting new solo album, Resilient Heart. That's coming out in November on Mighty Music. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, it is.
Now, can you walk us through your songwriting process?
Can I take you back to how it kind of happened,
Absolutely.
And then we'll go to that? Cool. I'm good friends with Mike Tramp, and I did some shows with Mike about 2 years ago in the East Coast of the United States. And I've been thinking about doing another solo album for quite a long time. And I think it was last summer, I had 3 songs that I had recorded that I wanted to set for the template of the direction of the album. I didn't want to do another Sainted Sinners album or a White Snake style record. I wanted to do something fresh and new. And so I kind of shopped it to all the big labels that are still around. And the cool thing about it was they all said, we don't really know what it is. It's David Reece's voice, but it's in between the chairs. And that's like a weird thing to say, but it was like exactly what I was trying to do. I didn't want to sound like I did another Sainted Sinners album without Frank. So they kind of passed on it, There were Frontiers and AFM and the others where they weren't really sure. They liked it, but they weren't sure, blah, blah, blah. So I started thinking about Mike because I knew he was on Mighty Music, Target Records. And I just wrote him one day. I said, what do you think? And he goes, they'll sign you right now. So I wrote him an email and boom, I sent him a few songs and immediately they said, yeah, let's talk about a deal. So I owe a lot of credit to Mike about that. And another guy named Alessandro Lafante, he's really good friends with Mike, better than myself actually. So that's how that all kind of kicked off. And originally I was working with a guy named Martin Frank, writing songs with him. And he and Target Records decided they no longer wanted to do business together. So here I am with these songs and the direction of the album. And I'm like, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? Because I don't play guitar very well. To be honest, I'm a singer and a lyricist. So the label suggested that I reach out to Marco Angioni, who actually lives in Denmark as well. And he owns a studio called Death Island Studios and does a lot of records for Target music. So initially I was kind of scared of that because I knew the direction I wanted to go. And I've been in production deals before where the label says, okay, now you have to work with these guys. And you kind of compromise yourself just to continue the motion. But I laid out the 3 songs. One of them is called Karma and the other one's called 2 Coins and a Dead Man that I said, I definitely want to go this direction. And he and the other guitar player, Smart and Jepsen Anderson, they really picked up on it and followed that flag. So that's how that all kind of happened. I had 3 done, actually 4, and we chose 3. And then we started, looking to work together. So they would write riffs and send me stuff over the email, and I'd start, scribbling words and singing into the phone. And it really happened fast. I have to say, I was highly doubtful that it would work, but I think I found a pretty good working unit. And the writing process was fast. I mean, this album has 13 tracks. I think the U.S. and European edition will be 11, and Asia will be 13. I can't tell you, I really haven't done an album that I feel this good about in many, many years. I mean, a lot of guys say that, but I can actually sit and listen to the whole thing and really enjoy it.
That's great, though. I mean, and it's nice that you have that when you finally reach out to somebody who understands your vision. That has to be incredibly exciting, knowing that I'm going to be able to relay this, and they're going to take it and work with it, and they know what I want. So that's great.
Well, yeah, but part of the fear of that is, it turns into a political thing immediately, because they're in another band called Meridian, and they are signed to the same label. So Marco, being the in-house producer, he's got to answer to the label. So right away, there's, you have to be a band, and it creates a whole mountain of other difficulties, where you don't have that freedom to step aside as a band and say, no, this is what the band wants, because everybody was connected. But luckily, it all worked out. So, yeah, it feels good.
I'm anxious for that to come out. I'm pretty excited.
August 8th is the first single. It's called Anytime at All. And we're playing a huge festival in July on the 13th. It's called Lupolo Rock Fest. So we're going to film the audience involved with that song live and play it on stage and make the first single video out of that.
Well, let's go back to, you were saying you were going to have different songs in different areas, like 13 in Japan. Why does that happen? Because I noticed a lot of these bands who were big in the early 90s, and then I'll throw an example, Hardline. They are huge overseas, and they don't play much back here. So why do you think that dynamic changes?
Well, in America, I say always, you're here today, gone later today. In Europe, what the European fans, if they like you and they enjoy your music, they latch on to you. Okay, you may have a stinker album once in a while that they'll criticize, but they'll stay loyal to you as a fan base. Where in America, I find that it's very, like I said, you do an album they don't care for, you're done. But if they believe in you, they follow you, they'll go to venues, they buy albums. It's a whole different dynamic, with the fan base. So a band like Hardline, who I know some of the guys pretty well, they do really well. England, Germany, it's the same for me. I mean, I'm obviously married to an Italian woman, so I'm here. But a part of the reason I'm here is because this is where my business is too.
I always wondered what the reasoning was behind that. And maybe I'm just I have had my favorites since the first, rock song I've ever listened to, and they've stayed with me through my life. So, I mean, I didn't.
Who's that?
In general, tons of them in general. I mean, I've been listening to, AC/DC. I mean, I was listening to Accept. I was listening to Motley Crue, Def Leppard.
Right.
And I'm still looking forward to the music that can be put out now, and like you said, there's always a couple stinkers in there, but for me, it's just I like the loyalty aspect of it. I mean, if I could go out and see more concerts, I most certainly would, but I'm glad that you stuck with that, because you are, like I said earlier, your voice is absolutely incredible. I've always loved your voice.
Thank you very much. I'm lucky that I can still perform and sing. Many singers get older. I'll be 58 in August, and I've been singing a long time. I've taken pretty good care of it, so I'm lucky to I'm able to do it. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned, Accept. I mean, I actually, when Frank was doing the Bonfire thing, a friend of mine who manages Graham Bonnet, was always yelling at me saying, why don't you go on tour and do the Eat the Heat record and perform that? Because he really never did. You know, I did the classics with those guys and a few off the new album that I did with them. And I always kind of ignored them, you know. But when I played Generation Clash and Hellhammer, the crowd would go crazy. And so I decided one day to try it. And I made a contact in Barcelona. And the guy said, yeah, you'll headline the festival, but you have to play the whole album. The next day I was booked in Victoria, Spain. From there, it blossomed into this whole other thing, which is really cool because I'm back in the public eye and I'm releasing the solo album. So I owe a lot of debt and gratitude to that album by Accept, because without that album, I wouldn't be talking to you. People can say critically they hated it or they loved it, but that album put me where I am. But I'm lucky that I can...
Oops, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, that's okay.
I was just going to say, you've recently played songs from the album live. Now, how has that been received by, like, fans, that, you know, that you're taking Accept songs out there and throwing them back in the mix? I mean, are they giving you, like, thumbs up for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I got a lot of praise for it because, you know, those songs are hard to sing. I mean, you're screaming your head off, and I can still luckily do it. A lot of the reviews were great. I made a bad mistake in Barcelona on the first show because I let the promoter talk me into a Spanish band. I didn't know much about them, and to be honest, they were crap. But my voice was strong, and I had a lot of people, you know, there just to hear me sing it. So the loyalty came through, and they understood that the band wasn't so good. But I decided I'll never do that again. I'm going to put my band together if I'm going to continue to do it. But yeah, it's been really, really cool. I've actually thought about re-recording the album and re-releasing it with a more modern sound, like a 30-year anniversary.
That would be awesome. That's what I was going to ask you. Now, would you consider having any bonus tracks on the solo album from that album?
Well, we're going to film and do everything at this big festival in July, and I'm going to record the whole set. And we're actually playing about 90% of Eat the Heat for that show. It was one of the reasons I got the gig, and then debut the solo songs. But I'm going to record it and film it and see if something comes out of it. And then, of course, with technology, we can mix it and fix any vocal boo-boos or guitar stuff. And I thought about it, and I've mentioned it to the label, and they're kind of like, eh. Because, you know, there is politics involved.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you got to go through the managers, and Wolf and Gabby, they run Accept. So anything is possible. I actually wrote her, I reached out to her and mentioned my thoughts about recording the album, and that I would actually be honored if Wolf would play some solos on it. And I haven't heard back, but that would be kind of the ultimate way for me to do it.
Oh yeah, that sounds amazing. Now, yeah, that definitely does. Now, are all of the songs written from personal experience?
Yeah, I think so. I've never been a baby whoa whoa lyricist. There are places for those kind of songs, you know, a lot of my old time favorites from the 60s and stuff, but I try to write about what I think about and what I see going on around me. I mean, I'll watch the news or somebody will say something and then it'll be like a title. A lot of my songs I try to write about positive endings, you know, that not everything is so bad. Because rock and roll is supposed to be fun, you know. That's why it was invented, I think. Yeah, so I think a lot of it is a reflection about who I am as a person. I mean, I'll read back on my lyrics. A lot of times when I'm writing a song, it doesn't make any sense at all to me. And then I'll release it, and somebody will say, oh, that song, that what you said there is so cool because it's exactly what I'm thinking about. And I'll go, wow. It's all about it. It's interpretation, you know.
That's
and then
true.
I'll look at it and go, well, what was I saying? Man, you know, now that's what I was thinking. So it's weird. I mean, you're a writer, you know, so you probably understand what I mean, a journalist. So, you know.
Right. Now, I did read somewhere that you stated this record is modern, heavy, and very melodic. Can you give us an example of who you might compare yourself to sound-wise, or who inspired you to go that direction?
I'm probably going to get shot for this. I'm probably one of the only living people that admire a band like Nickelback. I mean, I'm not comparing my album to them, But what I am going to say is, lyrically, I admire the guy, and they're like the most hated band on the planet, but they sell more records than most people, and they sell out all these huge arenas in Europe. I never really understood that. It's kind of weird. You know, everybody hates to love them, but I noticed, you know, getting older, that I can make 100 Whitesnake-y style albums all my life. But is that the singer I want to be? So I went to Montana, where I'm from, last year, and I sat back and I really started thinking about how would I approach a different style of singing. I have to keep some of David Reece, but I've got to freshen it up. And that's what I did. I can't really explain it. So when the listeners hear it, they'll hear it. It's very punchy. It's got the big harmonies that I'm pretty well known for. It's got a lot of Bangalore choir in it, but with a heavier sound, I would say. But, you know, I got a little bored, to be honest. You know, he sings a lot like David Coverdale. He can do that perfect. And I did a lot of tribute bands, and I played with Ian Pace, you know, live, and I've done that. So, I mean, my voice suits that stuff. But I hope I'm answering your question. It's one of those things I can't really put my finger on, but I do listen to a lot of the newer bands and younger bands, and the ones that are really happening, and I'm trying to absorb that, because people my age are actually enjoying them too. So there's something there.
Right. I think a lot of times with bands that do well, people tend to, especially people in the music business, tend to come down on them. And I think when people who are, you know, just fans hear their bands putting somebody else down, another band, that they just kind of jump on the bandwagon, and that's not fair. You know, no. I mean, it's not.
Hey, I'm going to tell you what it is. I mean, it's a simple thing in my mind. It's called the it factor. You either have it or you don't. A guy like Bret Michaels, technically not a great singer, okay? But he's got it.
Right.
Okay? He's 57. He's still out there shaking it, looking good, selling out great rooms. Cheap Trick's on tour with him. They go out with Def Leppard. Those guys have it, okay? And you're talking about 40 years, 30, 40 years of it. And if you have it, it's really easy to shit on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But why? Because every one of these bands are striving for that it thing. You can criticize all you want, or people can, but they're not at that level, and they're sitting on their house, you know, selling 50 CDs a year off the internet. There's a huge difference, you know. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean,
oh, I understand completely, totally.
Look at Mick Jagger. I mean, the guy's 76 years old, and I mean, people laugh at him on Facebook because he's warming up on stage in giant stadiums. But you know what? He's got it.
Right. I think a lot of things with these bands that have lasted for 30, 40 years, especially when MTV came around, they promoted and promoted and promoted and promoted. I mean, it was constantly, you know, playing those songs over. But nowadays, there's social media, and I understand that there's decent reach there, but nothing in comparison to what they had when MTV was going, you know. So it's different. Now, how do you are you finding that now promoting for yourself is much more difficult, or are you the social media, is that basically your platform?
Yes and yes. It's social media, you have to be creative because everybody can do the same thing. I mean, I'm so tired of seeing black and white videos of a bunch of guys with black T-shirts in a rehearsal room, you know, with the white light just on their heads. I mean, that's been done to death. And that's kind of where MTV killed itself. You know, they did the same thing, the giant productions. I was guilty of it in Bangalore Choir. But that's what worked. That's what MTV called for. You can only go so long in some formats before people just tire of it. I find it really difficult, the bullshit factor. There's a lot of so-called professionals on the internet that they don't have a clue. And it's really, when you're trying to really get somewhere with your career, you're kind of reaching for straws. You know, you're grabbing at everything possible to expose yourself. And a lot of them just are nothing. They're just somebody sitting in their kitchen pretending to be a manager or a booker. So I do most of everything myself. I would prefer not to, but it's really hard to find somebody that you can put your complete trust in, that somebody that can tell you when you're wrong and you'll listen to them, because I'm wrong a lot. Managers always think they know what's best for you, and 99% of them don't even know what's best for themselves. It's a tough gig. Clubs. I have a guy that was actually trying to promote me, saying he was booking me in one country and was selling me for basically nothing. And I came behind him trying to book myself, and he said, "Well, why did you raise your fees so many hundreds of euros?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, so-and-so called me 2 weeks ago and I was ready to do a deal at this price." I mean, there's so much out there that you have to fight off. So yeah, it's a 24-hour day gig.
Oh yeah, you have to stay in control of
Yeah.
If you don't take control of your own, then you got somebody else out there. No, that's terrible. And I think that's a big problem where when we first started as a station and stuff, we worried about that. We were concerned about contacting record companies and stuff like that because we really weren't that established. And thank goodness that people were taking leaps of faith with us. We're not doing it to be paid. We're doing it so we can promote you guys and keep rock alive, you know? So cool. I understand that completely.
It's a weird thing. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that can gather up 10 bands and make, €50 a piece per band per month and make a living at that. Yeah. But they're doing nothing for the music. It's doing nothing. I mean, but there's another side of it that's really hard, is there are some amazing young bands in Europe who play for free, sleep in their car like we did in the 70s and 80s, and 200 of their friends will pay 10, 15, 20 euros at the door and go in and drink 100 euros worth of beer and rally them on. So you get a guy like David Reece, who's got a 35-year career, who has a fee because he has a crew and a band to pay and hotels. They'll ask you directly, why should I do that when I know 200-300 kids will come to this venue if I just say, I'll take them? The competition is heavy.
Right. Now, are you getting a lot of younger crowd at your shows?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, like the Accept album, and it's like you run into a guy that's like 18 that's wearing the T-shirt and got the LP in his hand and says, "My brother had this when I was a kid and he listened to it all the time, and then I really started to like it. So my brother hated you because he was an Udo fanatic, but he grew to love the album, and I bought it because I love it." And it's kind of gotten legs that way. It's a flattering thing, Bangalore Choir, I sign those CDs pretty much at every show I do. It's really weird because Bangalore Choir came out the same week Nirvana was released, and I'm probably doing the old cliche story that, Nirvana killed rock and roll. Well, rock and roll killed itself in many ways, but I was told by Warner Brothers that music was dead, get a day job again. And I didn't know that Bangalore Choir was #1 in Europe, huge in Asia, huge in England. And had I known that, I would have jumped on a plane with a band and we would have gone back to the gypsy days, sleeping on people's floors and playing clubs. But we were told it was over, but it wasn't.
That's a shame.
It goes back to Europe, what you said earlier. What's the difference? The Europeans, what happened to you? Because I played Firefest in 2010, and Bangalore hadn't seen each other for 20 years. And people were singing every word to every song. And they were like, "Why didn't you come to UK?" Well, we were told it was over. Bloody hell, it's a lie. We love this band.
That's awesome. Now let me ask you, how does a solo project compare to being in a band?
Pardon?
How does a solo project compare to being with a band?
I have to say I'm more in control, but you still have the human dynamic because you have to be respectful of the other people. They have lives and wives and kids. They have to be paid. One thing I like about it is I don't have to ask my business partner if it's a good idea. If I make a decision, unless it's completely absurd, typically they follow me into the fire. I like that. The look of the band, I can or myself, I'm not I just feel more original, you know.
Right.
But there's still that human dynamic. You can't, walk in like I don't want to mention any names. There are certain guys that just dictate everything, and they're hated by everybody. I don't want to be in a band like that. I want to be around a bunch of people who I like to be with anyways.
Right.
And it's hard to do. It's hard to do. I mean, you're stuck in a van or a nightliner for 20 hours. I mean, it's like being married, you know. If your cat shits on the floor, you're not very happy, right? So,
right.
And normally the cat's been really cool, and then one day he does something really stupid, and you flip out. Like, why did you do that? That's human nature,
right.
But I hope I answered that.
You most certainly did. Now, you've got a lot of big festivals coming up this summer. Can we talk about those?
Yeah. Originally, Lupolo Festival in July I was asked to open for Dead Daisies on the opening day, July 13th. And I said, of course. I mean, because Dead Daisies those guys are really killing it. They're doing really well. So I said I would be honored. I know some of the guys. And about a week later, I got a call from the promoter that Dead Daisies backed out and had a bigger offer in Australia. And they said, would you headline? And I was like, are you kidding me? Wow. And he's like, the stars all lined up. There's about 8,000 people will be there. So, of course, I'll headline. And the guy's a big Accept fan. And when I walked into his club, he was playing, Eat the Heat. And, it was a special moment. So that's happening. And then we got a little lull happening between that and to the fall. I go to Rock and Skull. I'm playing there the 26th of October. And I'm playing with a guy named Sean Oakes. He's organized the band around me because to fly the European band is absolutely ridiculous with the visa charges for those guys. You've read all the nightmares.
Oh, I've heard of them too.
Yeah. I mean, it's a minimal $10,000 just to get 4 guys to work, and you have to report every penny. It's so basically it's easier. And Sean and those guys are great players. So they'll be my backing band. And then I fly back on the 28th. And my first show is Halloween night in Spain. And I do 4 shows in a row in Spain in November, October 31st through the 3rd. And then every weekend, like say Thursday through Sunday, I'm in Sweden or Switzerland. November is a great release month. Perfect timing.
My birthday is in November too, so that's great.
When is it?
November.
November, what day?
24th.
Oh, you're kidding. My son is the 24th.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, do you ever get nervous performing? Because I know I've talked to some people that have been in the biz for as long as you have, and there are still times they get nervous.
Every day.
And what?
I get flipped out. I turn into a nervous wreck.
What are the nerves about, like specifically? Like if it's going to be a good show, or is there anything specific?
Sometimes I ask myself, what are you doing? Are you out of your mind? There's 10,000 people out there. I mean, it's terrifying. And then, maybe you had a technical problem, or maybe you don't feel good. You've had the flu and you have to go out and pretend that you feel perfect. But the anxiety hits me. One thing, the words of wisdom that never leave me, Steven Tyler said, he gets them every night. And once those butterflies leave you, he claims it's over. And I'm like, you still get them? And he's like, absolutely. I mean, I use that energy. It's weird because you forget about it after like 45 seconds in the first song. It's gone. Unless all hell's breaking loose on stage, like the sound is collapsing and nobody's involved and, you're fighting to get people to get involved. That can be kind of a nightmare. And that's happened to me. I mean, they just don't like you because they don't know you, it's hard to get somebody to enjoy something they've never heard before. And a lot of times you think they don't like you, but they're just kind of observing.
Right.
They enjoy you. So there's a fine line where you don't want to be offensive, like, come on, get off your ass and let's do something here. You have to know how to work with the audience. And thank God I've done it long enough where I can kind of tell if they really hate me or if they're just curious. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is.
That's perfectly fine. That's great.
It's the truth.
Oh, I can imagine. I would, I mean, if you could figure out how many people you've actually stood in front of your whole entire career, I mean, that's, I can't even fathom how that would feel knowing that I've got, 30, 25, 30,000 people looking back at me, waiting for me to just, open my mouth and let them hear. And I'm sure with that first applause, that's kind of when things probably feel much better when you're a little anxious.
I'm going to tell you the way it really is. I've only come 15 rows because first I'm a fan. And when I was 15, I saw Peter Frampton and the J. Giles Band, and I was in the audience, and I watched them throwing the beach ball around inside the auditorium, and everybody was smoking weed and singing and throwing frisbees, and the magic in the air when the lights went out, I said, I want to do that. And I still feel that. I mean, a lot of times I feel like a little kid. When I'm doing festivals, I like to watch the other bands. I'll stand on the side of the stage or I'll watch in the screen in the backstage area. But I fool you not. There's some shows that have thousands of people, and then there's sometimes I play for 100 people.
Right.
I mean, it's a crazy thing. You can play a huge place, and then 2 days later, your club owner's thinking maybe we should cancel. But you got to get everything you got.
Right. I hear that. Now, I always enjoy getting a few fan questions for my interviews. Kind of let them see how you are behind the music a little bit. Wayne wanted to know if you plan on making music until you can't physically do it anymore.
Yeah, I would like to. Maybe Mother Nature says, okay, the voice is done. I don't want to go out there and sound ridiculous. I'll never lip sync. I'm adamantly opposed to that. I won't fake it. I think there'll come a time when you have to go, I better take a real hard look at myself. Financially it's a struggle, so there's all kinds of dynamics there to consider. If the demand is no longer there, maybe I'll go back into construction and make an album every 2 years just because I love it.
Awesome. Now we got into this a little bit earlier. This next question, Denny wanted to know what happened with Bangalore Choir.
Basically, like I said earlier, that we had the #1 added to radio single on opening week called Loaded Gun. The video, and actually Jared Leto is in that video, and he's a little boy, he's an actor, little model. Now I see him, and he's this major movie star. It's crazy, but and in the process, we went out with the Lynch Mob and did some shows. We did quite a bit of playing and touring, and we had White Snake's management. They managed hard at the time, the Eagles. I mean, we had everything. We were preparing to go on the Slip of the Tongue tour to open for White Snake in Europe, which is like handing you the golden goose, right? And then, and I don't blame Nirvana or any of these bands, but all of a sudden I started realizing people wearing different clothes and making fun of guys with big blonde hair and these greasy, dirty guys going to see Pantera or these small punk kind of bands. And I'm like, what's happening? I think we sold about 375,000 albums in the first month, and Nirvana sold 600,000. The following month, they sold 6 million.
Oh my God.
So, needless to say, I was called into the office with all these high hopes that we had a super hit single, and Warner Brothers was going to dump a ton of money into us, and we're going to do the big tour. From all of that to maybe 6 weeks to 8 weeks later being told, get a day job, it's over, rock is dead. And I'm not the only guy. I mean, Warrant, tons of bands were just thrown under the bus. I mean, I remember standing in the Rainbow going, what happened? We're done.
Yep.
And I partially blame it on, record companies going, get a David Lee Roth lookalike, Bret Michaels guy in front of a band who plays, whoa, whoa, kind of, rock anthems and the big ballad. And I think the youth at the time just kind of got sick of it. And a thing kind of happened in the generation. But I did think this will never last. This is a fad. And I mean, look at all the bands that are gone now.
Oh, yeah.
You've got Pearl Jam's around. Alice in Chains to me was a real band, but 99% of those guys, rest in peace, are dead. I mean, it's over. Nobody's talking about the Red Hot Chili Peppers anymore.
No.
They're talking about Judas Priest and is this the final tour, or is Def Leppard going to tour again with Foreigner, or, you know, I mean, they're not talking about getting Pearl Jam out on stage. It's over, but it made that's what happened to Bangalore Choir. It murdered rock and roll.
Oh, yeah, those grunge bands played havoc with a lot of you guys that were coming, you know, out full force then, and it's a shame because when you listen to the stuff, you know, when you listen to it while it was those big fans of that era and genre, we're all sitting back going, what the hell is this stuff they're playing on MTV? This isn't music. It just didn't seem like music, and I've not been a fan of grunge, nor will I ever be, but I guess they have tried different things. I don't know, but I'm sticking with my, you know, my genre that I'll be.
Well, I can say that I can tell you one thing that was a life-changing moment for me. I went to see Pantera at the Palace in LA, and I can tell you that they put something on stage that I said, uh-oh, this was the heavier side that was coming out at the time. And if you remember that tour with Judas Priest, I think it was Ram It Down. They were all wearing khaki shorts and combat boots. And then they did Painkiller. I mean, it changed metal for sure.
Yeah, most definitely.
But Nirvana was the other side of it. You know, it was like, oh, poor me. I want to shoot myself. I want to do more heroin. My life is miserable. Yet I live in a mansion in Seattle and I've got $300 million. It was really strange.
Most definitely. I agree. Now, Eric says that he met you in the early 90s and you were such a cool dude. He'd like to know, when you come over here to do Rock and Skull, will there be a meet and greet?
Absolutely. Awesome. I hope to get there on the, I want to come in on the 25th and hang out because I got a ton of friends there that I haven't seen forever. And I love to hang out with people and just talk and just do the vibe thing, you know, have some beers and then do the gig the next day, probably stay for the next day and then fly home the third or fourth day, you know. Absolutely. And thank you, whoever you are that said that. I appreciate it.
I love Rock and Skull. I wish I could get out there. That drive for me, though, is rough. It's a long ride.
How long? What, about 12 hours, 18 hours?
It took me like... The last time, my son, my best friend, and I went, and we were in a very small car. So for me, with the MS, it was pretty harsh because by the time we got there, 9.5 hours later, I felt like I needed a shoehorn to get out of the car because I couldn't bend anything.
Yeah.
And it was, and unfortunately, even though, you know, we made it out, I was miserable the whole time. So we ended up coming back the day after, and I wanted to
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It happens. I went out to see Hardline, so I he's got that done, so.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, look at Johnny. I mean, Johnny is killing it. I mean, he's I just saw a video today about the Z7 in Pratel, Switzerland. I mean, they're selling out with Axel Pell, and then Hardline just did a bunch of big shows in England.
Yep.
And my dear friend who actually did the vocals, who I always work with, Mario Percadani, is the new guitar player. So we're all a really tight community here in Italy and around Europe. We all know each other very well.
And you know Alessandro Di Vecchio? Very
well. I did an Ian Pace show with him in Bulgaria. Amazing singer, amazing talent. He actually did the vocals for me on the Glorious album by Bonfire. That's when we really got to know each other. We've spent many a night in a rental car, driving through the hillsides of the eastern bloc of Europe, just chatting. I have a lot of respect for him.
He's very nice, very sweet.
Yeah, guy. Very nice man.
No, I like to ask some questions myself, and they're more personal questions. Who are you listening to these days? Like, who are maybe your top 3 bands on your Spotify playlist?
I'm a diehard Stevie Ray Vaughan fan, guitarist. Nice. I find myself going back to him on YouTube because it's a tragic story because I was fired from Accept, and a month later he died. That same month my grandmother died, and ironically one of my relatives was the coroner, a medical examiner for Stevie Ray's body. All in about a month. It was like a horrible thing. But I had been able to see Stevie Ray Vaughan play live twice, once in the U.S., and then I took Wolf Hoffman with me from Accept, and I said, you got to see this guy. And about 20 people were in the audience, and we stood there, and Wolf had bought one beer, and at the end of the show, he still had the full beer and was standing there in shock. What did I just witness? So he went out and bought every Stevie Ray Vaughan album he could find to find out who this guy was. That guy I listened to a lot. I'm a huge fan of Paul Rodgers as a singer.
Oh, yeah. That
he just gets better like wine with age. He's a sweetheart of a gentleman, a class act. Like I said, I listen to some of the new bands. My wife is a 6 a.m. fan.
Yeah.
I listen to that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she loves 6 a.m. She loves Nikki Sixx. And she loves Richie Kotzen. I listen to him. Mr. Big, she loves Eric.
Me too.
A lot of those guys. But I'm a traditional blues guy and Motown guy for the most part. If I go to YouTube or whatever and I'm just fishing around and I want to listen to music, I'll listen to, soul songs or Sly and the Family Stone or Beth Hart. I really like her as a singer. Joe Bonamassa, actually, I got to be honest, I think he's pretty cool. That's about it, though. I mean, if I find myself listening to songs, to be honest, I kind of subconsciously steal parts. And Michael Schenker talked about that at one time in his life, and I believe it's true. You really love a song, and then 2 weeks later, you're playing this or writing this great lyric, and you go, wow, I'm a genius. And then you realize, wait a minute, you heard that somewhere else.
I can understand that, though. I've heard Michael. Agreed. And you hear some bands out there, like I was just introduced to another band that I'll be interviewing tomorrow, and they're a Swedish girl band, and the beginning of one of their songs is like AC/DC. It almost sounds like AC/DC in the very beginning, because I'm waiting for the lyrics to come out as AC/DC's, but they weren't. So people do that a lot, but I don't think it's anybody like stealing anything. You're just finding something that sounds interesting to you and you want to build something around it. So I think there's no problem with that.
No. It's not conscious. Some guys are consciously doing it, and I've worked with guys like that. We got to write a song like, Living on a Prayer, and we got to write this, and, everybody knows. They're not stupid, but look at AC/DC. Look at that band. Amazing. Look at Axl Rose.
Yep.
The guy is in the two biggest bands in the world, GNR and AC/DC. And that goes back to the it factor. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
I'd like to think I have a little bit of it, but that guy, you're not in the two biggest bands in the world for no reason.
Right. I agree. Whether you love or hate Axl and the things that he's, done and said in the past, there's no denying the talent there whatsoever.
Yeah, he's got it.
Now, this is my favorite question to ask, because I've gotten some juicy stories out of this one. What is your craziest fan encounter?
I've had some stalkers that were pretty creepy. I had to change my phone number. Well, long story short, you probably heard it before, but I met her on a online dating thing. And then I realized, it's not working. So I changed my phone number and got a call I lived in a small town in Montana, and, they called me in and said, they're asking for your phone number. We don't do that. And it proceeded to get really bad, threatening, calling the police, that kind of stuff. I've been in situations in the audience where they've jumped on me and beaten me up. A bunch of skinheads in Atlanta jumped on me on stage when I was at Accept, because we seemed to everybody assumed that Accept was kind of like a Nazi skinhead band. And I remember one night at the Omni Theater, they were doing the Sieg Heil thing, and I was leaning over in the audience, and they grabbed me by the arm, and I couldn't get away, so I kept pulling, and my microphone slipped out in their hand, and they started screaming that stupid stuff in the mic. And the next thing I realized, I'm on my back on the stage being pummeled by 4 or 5 guys with, shaved heads. That was pretty rough.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I got my ass kicked pretty good. And the whole security time, they're the rent-a-cops. They're just standing there watching. And I'm like, help me, I'm going to get killed. That was weird. I've been really lucky, though, in a lot of ways. Most people just want to hang out and talk about the songs you do or who you've met or what's it like and stuff like that. And I have a story to tell, so I appreciate being asked that stuff.
Good. Now, has there been any musicians who have passed away that you wish you would have had a chance to collaborate with?
Good question. Not that come to my mind, but there are many that I one guy that I really grew to respect was Tom Petty. That one really bothered me. I don't know why that one. I started to really admire the simplicity of his songs, and then him dying. Dimebag, that was a terrible thing. That's a guy, anybody that gets buried in Ace Frehley's coffin with Eddie Van Halen's guitar, that just tells you a little bit about what the guy did to people. Right. That was tough. If I could, I really couldn't answer that. It would take me a while to think about it. I've never really thought about, I wish I could have worked with that guy, but I'd like to do an album with Michael Schenker. That's always been kind of a bucket list. I would like to do an album with Jimmy Page.
There you go.
But I'm sure the critical side of it I'd probably never make it through the first song, but something like that would be really cool. Jeff Beck. Yeah, those would be bucket list things for me.
Awesome. Great choices, too.
Yeah. Who knows what the future holds? You never know.
True.
The phone, I might get an email next week. I don't know.
Well, I have to tell you, I really love your honesty and the way you think about things. Like, you make no apologies for what you believe in. You say what you mean what you say. I'm the same way. Now, do you find that gets you in trouble sometimes?
All the time.
I know it does me.
All the time. One thing that I struggle with in this business, and it could be part of my failure, if I don't like something, I've been in a band up until a few years ago that there was a lot of stealing going on, lying, and I was bringing it to everybody's attention, but they refused to see it, and it came into fruition. But I was made out to be the bad guy and the problem maker, but I saw it coming. I refuse to work with people like that. And if I see something that I'm not liking and it's not working for me, I'm not going to live in it. I know a lot of guys who will make that compromise just so they can be on stage and kind of have that 55 minutes of fame. I don't feel that way. Maybe I should think better that way. I don't know, because I know some guys that are really successful that put up with a lot of shit. But I don't sleep well at night. My personality. I left music for about 9 years. After Bangalore Choir, I had another album a band called Circle of Silence. It started out with, after Ray Gillen had passed away, I was jamming with Badlands. And Jake just didn't know what he wanted to do. And Greg Chason and I kind of splint off from that and did Circle of Silence. And we did 2 albums. It didn't really work out. So I said, screw it. Music's dead. And I left. But the whole time I missed it. I'd be singing in the truck, going to work, I didn't know anything about the internet. I didn't even have a computer. And as soon as I got one and I went on, remember MySpace?
Yes.
I had about 1,000 people going, where have you been? And I ended up in Sweden in 2007 doing an album, and I'm back. But I just burned out. When you get told no enough, either you're stupid and keep doing it, or you just say, okay, it's over. I got to get a life. And I'm the kind of guy, like that question that was asked earlier, will there be a time where I just give it up? Maybe that'll happen again. I survived. I was depressed, but I lived. I got through it. I worked hard. I would prefer to sing. But I'm not going to change who I am to suit some guy wearing a suit who doesn't care if I live or die anyways. You know what I mean?
True. I agree with that. That was
sorry.
Definitely a good answer. For sure.
That's true. It's just the way I am. But, I see a lot of guys that get a lot of success that are playing that game. And I do think, maybe I should shut up, because I'm not easy to work with. I know that because I'm bold. I'll speak my mind.
Yeah.
I'm not violent or anything. I'll just say no. And that's one thing that I never did before. To kind of go with your question, back in the day, everybody was trying to get a major record deal, right? So you fought, you kicked and you clawed and you starved, lived in cars, you did the whole Hollywood thing, and then you got your big record deal. And you would do anything to stay there because you lived that dream, you pretended in the mirror, you played the whiskey, you did all the, you know? And I made a promise to myself when I came back to music that if I don't like something, I'm going to say no. That's just about as truthful as I can be. And maybe I'm wrong. And then when I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But like we said earlier, there's 99.9% of the people in the media now in this business that they're not going to do anything for the band. It's for them.
Right. You got to look out for yourself. I mean, unfortunately, you just can't trust anybody anymore. And it's a shame that it's come down to this, But I completely understand where you're coming from. Now, is there anything you'd like to let people know that we may have not covered in this interview today?
I think we talked about the album, Resilient Heart. I'm really proud of it. I'm happy to have this band, Marco Angione. Actually, Malte Burkett is on bass. He played in Sainted Sinners with me. And I've toured quite a bit of shows with him around Europe, and he and I developed a really great bond. He's a rock star. I mean, he's got the look, he's got the talent. I mean, it works, and he comes from he's a little younger than me, so he's grown up on those different sounds. So his contribution to the album was fresh. Martin Jepsen on guitar and Marco Angione on guitar, great. My drummer, Sigurd Jensen, is amazing. He's young. He's a monster. We like each other, and I pray that it continues. The album is... I can't say enough about it. And the production is fantastic. August 8th, anytime at all, first single with it.